Now, with the president set to deliver the State of the Nation address, many are asking, are we ready for the next big disaster? Now, after days of flooding, storms, and monsoon rains, disaster resilience has once again become a top priority. Joining us is Mr. Butch Meily, the president of the Philippine Disaster Resilience Foundation, to talk about where we are, what still needs work, and how we can better protect Filipinos moving forward. Magandang umaga, Sir Butch. Thank you so much for joining us.
Happy rainy Monday, Paolo. Magandang umaga.
Yeah, maybe rainy, but still a beautiful day here. Let's go on first and talk about what happened last week, because once again, nagiging top of mind yung disaster resilience, disaster preparedness, especially in the face of Typhoon Emong and of course the enhanced southwest monsoon. When we take a look at yung disaster resilience natin, especially after last week, where would you say we are, and of course, what are the biggest gaps na identify po ninyo?
Well, if you remember, if you remember what happened last week, no, we had 7 days of rain and then a lot of flooding. And last year we had, if you remember, the six storms which are clustered in November.
Yeah.
None of those were really strong typhoons. No, one landed in Ilocos Norte, I think, but the area that was flooded was Bicol. So you can see that the weather is changing, and we kind of have to change with it. No? So I think that's important. The president himself said something that we need to be in a state of permanent disaster response, and I would add uh, a state of permanent disaster preparedness, because that's just the way things are today, and we need to adjust. We're pretty strong in certain things. I think our warnings are much better,
Mhm.
but the gaps, drainage needs to be improved. That's a big gap.
Well, you mentioned drainage, and it became a hot topic last week in particular, especially when it comes to people re-examining certain budgets, especially when it comes to flood projects, disaster preparedness, and almost timely enough, mamayang hapon, President Bongbong Marcos will have his SONA. Do you feel that this has to be addressed as well when it comes to disaster preparedness and climate resilience, considering the natural disasters that we have had in the past year or so?
Well, Paolo, I'm pretty sure the president will mention it, will address it. We've had meetings with him over the past year, and he's very aware of the situation. And it's going to be hard to ignore it because first of all, it's raining very hard today. It'll probably be raining hard when he gets to the sauna. So I'm fairly sure he's going to address it. Question is whether he's going to call for a Department of Disaster reduction, which, if you acknowledge that we're in a state of disaster, permanent disaster response or preparedness, then it may be time to look at a permanent department for disaster resilience.
In your opinion, would that actually make a big difference, having a new department coming in the government to try and specifically address disaster preparedness, or should more focus be given to the actual government agencies already in place to be able to respond in a more timely manner and, of course, be more prepared in the future?
Well, Paolo, we've tried that, no, over the years. And if you notice, when there's a big disaster like Yolanda, or let's say even in Marawi, the tendency is to create ad hoc bodies
Mhm.
specifically for that. Well, it's Ondoy, uh, specifically for the storm or for the disaster. And these ad hoc bodies are time limited. So rather than keep creating these ad hoc bodies whenever there's a big disaster, it may make sense to take a closer look at the idea of that department. I know we want to avoid government waste and sayang yung pera, but maybe in this case where the situation's changed so much that it may be time to take another look at that idea.
I want to focus as well on yung mga drainages, as you mentioned a while ago, because LGUs in particular, as well as some government bodies, always have this debate, or rather this conversation na umiiba-iba yung mga standards, yung mga requirements ng each LGU, and it's a bit difficult to come up with more of a master plan when it comes to protecting the NCR in particular. When we take a look at more coordinated efforts to fight flood in particular, and of course flood protection and better drainages, what are the scenarios that you feel could actually solve this problem moving forward, especially on the long term when dealing with infrastructure planning?
Well, the problem with flooding, Paolo, is that you can't, each LGU can't address it by itself. No, they can try to make the problem better in their area, but the problem actually starts upstream, no? When we start to deforest areas in Dipolo or Marikina, in the Sierra Madres, that water comes storming down into the Pasig River and Laguna de Bay. So it has to be a coordinated approach. That's why we have the MMDA. I think it's better to look at Metro Manila as one entity facing many similar problems. And we know where the issues are, no? Where there are creeks, where there are rivers. These are potential threat areas. Areas close to the ocean are also under threat. So if we can look at those areas and then make sure that the water flows freely, we've got Mangaan Floodway, which was built years ago as part of a Greater Metro Manila flood plan. But I mean, we did the study, and there's about 200,000 informal settlers that have lessened the width of the Mangaan floodway. So the flow of water is not as great as it used to be. And this is a problem we looked at in Ondoy, not 2009, 2010. And then we probably need to look at the building the Parañaque spillway underground now. It's another part of the original plan in the 1970s to move water from Laguna Bay into Manila Bay. So it's a couple of moving pieces.
There have been different types of efforts as well, JICA in particular working with the Marikina River system. When we take a look at the technology present or the technology being utilized to better combat flood damages in particular, and of course flooding in certain areas, what excites you when it comes to certain projects already underway to addressing flooding here in Metro Manila?
Well, let me just look at what PDRF is doing. We've got started the world's first ever private sector run national operations center. We set it up in Clark to operate any potential earthquake in Metro Manila. We have a separate team there. And from there, we had our own ArcGIS system called Handa, which is available to a lot of our member companies and others, wherein they can help track the weather on their laptops and help use it, put their facilities in there on a dashboard and be able to track the potential damage to their facility. So that's one item. I mean, Starlink is important for keeping communications going. So we've got a program with the Australian government to provide emergency comms equipment to different LGUs. In addition, drones. We're looking at all these things. There are certain startups. There's something called Usher, which helps protect buildings from earthquakes. So young people are coming up with all kinds of new ideas, and we're trying to harness that as well.
Well, you mentioned all the efforts that you had. We are also worried in general that when disaster happens, mas reactionary tayo rather than prepared long term. In your opinion, how could we shift from being reactionary when it comes to disasters, not just flooding, even earthquakes in particular, some people are worried about from time to time? How can we shift to be more prepared on a long-term basis as a culture, in your opinion, especially considering what we've experienced in the past year or so?
Well, there's two things, Paolo. One is it's really economics. No, when people have good jobs, a better standard of living, they're going to demand better housing. They're going to build better homes, and that's what happens. You know, their standard of living improves, their homes improve. But you know, if you're living hand to mouth every day, it's pretty hard to worry about whether your shelter is disaster resilient. No, you're too worried about putting food on the table. So it's economics, but it's also, as you mentioned, changing that culture of being always reacting to a situation, but being more prepared. But I see that happening every day. The government's really taking the lead. Office of Civil Defense, DSWD, and a number of Department of Energy. We've got agreements with them. They're taking the lead in shifting to that culture of preparedness.
Thank you so much, Sir Butch. We wish we had more time because when it comes to disaster preparedness, we could definitely have a really long podcast about this. But we appreciate the insights and hopefully we can talk to you again soon. Maraming salamat po.
Thanks for having me.
He's the president of the PDRF, Mr. Butch Meily.